This short video is going to talk about general internet resources and college level writing. We're going to discuss what kind of sources are useful, how you can use them, why you can use them, and what you need to watch out for. So let's talk about the difference between general internet sources. These are the kinds of things that you would find through Google, and database sources. So in terms of access, your general internet sources are going to be free open access. Most of them anyone can get access to. Your college, library, or database, however, are paid subscriptions. So the college pays for each of those databases, which pays for the information within the databases. Sometimes you'll find the beginnings of sources on Google, but they'll be behind a paywall. So your college library database gets you through that paywall. So with the general internet, there's no oversight for inclusion. Anyone who has any familiarity with free website builders can go on and put something up. Your college library databases, though, are going to be curated by either librarians or by the owners of the databases. And those databases are academic institutions that are really based on getting the best information and the best sources. With the general internet, you can use all sorts of general search terms. You can type a complete question into Google and get answers. And that's because a Google search or a general internet search is going to use a series of algorithms and like spiders to kind of crawl through the metadata in the URLs and bring you stuff that they think is most relevant. It's often going to be the sources that have the best metadata in their websites. It's not necessarily going to be the best sources for you, but it does feel like it's easier to search because you don't have to isolate search terms. The college library databases are a little bit different. You're not going to be able to type in complete search terms. You're going to have to either use specific keywords or use Boolean search phrases and search terms. And that's because if you type in what is the internet, it's going to search for all of those words. What is the internet? And it's going to give you results for words like the and is. So with the college library databases, you have to be a little bit more careful about the types of search terms, and that can make them feel more frustrating at first if you're not aware of that. Now, both the general internet and the college library databases have a wide variety of sources and types of resources. In fact, you can find everything from links to general databases in the college library to videos to blogs and podcasts, images, and even other types of video sources. The general internet has all sorts of things on it, but some of those things can be questionable, again, because there's no regulation there. In general, the college library databases are accepted as authoritative sources. That means you do a little bit less work in terms of evaluating the sources. For the general internet, you have to evaluate the sources for accuracy and reputability of the source. But with the college library database, you only have to really evaluate the source for usefulness. You can kind of assume that if it's in the college library database, it's been edited, fact-checked, proofread, stuff like that. So why would you use internet sources? Many of you might have been told in high school or previous classes that you shouldn't. You should only use the library database. And as you get more accustomed to library databases, you might actually decide you like library database research better because it gives you stronger sources. But there are some good reasons to use a Google search. One of the best reasons is it helps you gain basic knowledge. If you are unfamiliar with the topic, if you don't have a lot of knowledge about the general facts around the topic you're researching, it's really difficult to come up with good keywords. So doing a Google search and figuring out basically the general conversations that are happening about your topic can help you isolate useful keywords and give you that background knowledge you need to know how to develop a research question. You can also use general internet sources because there are some professional resources there that are not available anywhere else. For instance, the readings that we did for the WPA and the Cs, those are professional sources. Those aren't database resources. And yet the things and the information you can find in those resources can be very applicable for college writing. You might also need to use government sources. Those are not necessarily going to be linked in through the databases, but if you wanted to do research on like the Department of Education or the Department of Agriculture or something like that, you would have to go through the general internet through a Google search to find the government websites. So let's talk about some useful sites for general internet research and how you can use them. So one of the first sites that everybody knows is Wikipedia, and you've probably been told in high school or in previous classes you cannot use Wikipedia for your essays. And that's true. You shouldn't use Wikipedia in your essays because Wikipedia is a wiki. A wiki is a website that anyone can go on and edit. You can literally go hit the edit button right now of any Wikipedia website entry, and you can type in whatever you want and publish it. And until one of their fact checkers finds it, it would just be there. The thing about Wikipedia, though, is it is a good way. It's a good encyclopedia. It's a great place to get a really solid overview of topics. And they've done a lot of research on this, and a lot of what you find in Wikipedia is perfectly accurate. Wikipedia is also going to be really useful as like a breadcrumb trail. By looking at a Wikipedia overview, you can not only get the kind of general topics, you can get for further reading, because they usually have links to the sources that they've used to write that article, or links to other subtopics within the Wikipedia entry. Now, you shouldn't use it because it's not necessarily seen as reputable for an academic audience. And anything that you do find on Wikipedia, you absolutely have to fact check and corroborate with other sources. There's a lot of plagiarism that happens on Wikipedia where people have copied and pasted other people's writing into an entry without citing it. And you do find inaccuracies. Google Scholar is another great site to use, especially if you're getting started. It limits your searches to scholarly articles. JSTOR is one of those databases sometimes you get through Google Scholar that we don't necessarily have access to directly through our campus website, but can be perfectly reasonable to use in a college paper. You might find information on news sites like CNN that you want to integrate, or ABC and NBC, places that don't necessarily publish articles in newspapers or magazines, but are considered reputable, accurate sources. Again, government sites and professional sites can be really great to use for the internet. And there are a lot of digital archives. You can find primary sources, you can find older information, you can find raw data through the general internet as well. The thing is, if you're going to use an internet site, you absolutely have to evaluate it. You can't just pull it offline and assume that it's going to be useful, reasonable, or appropriate for your college level writing. So you need to check for accuracy. Everything you pull offline, you should fact check in multiple places to make sure that it is in fact giving you the correct information. There are many biased sites that will look neutral, but when you actually follow the links to the sources they're citing, you'll see that they're misrepresenting those sources. You always want to check for who produced or wrote the source. Most internet sites are going to have some sort of parent company or author that is paying for the source and paying for the site. You want to look at their background. You want to look at their bias. Different political organizations or people with different biases can put out sites. For instance, Breitbart News is a highly conservative website that often delivers inaccurate information. But if you go to that website, it's produced in a way that looks like any other news site. So you really do have to kind of dig for the bias and the accuracy. You want to look at the purpose of the site. I've seen students use information from what are basically cheat sites. They're websites that are really intended to drum up business so that you can purchase research papers and turn them in as your own. Those sites use blog posts to drive business to the site. So you don't want a site from a resource that goes against like academic standards, for instance. And you want to check for the last update of the site. If it's a site that the copyright is showing like 2017, that is not a relevant site because it's way too old and nobody's looked at, updated, or taken care of that website. So there are some warning signs you need to watch out for if you're going to be using general internet research, either as your preliminary research or as possibly part of your essay. If you're looking at a source that is just inundating you with pop-ups and advertisements, that's a problem. That means that you are the product and they're really only using the content of the site to drive you to their site so that they can make advertising money off of you. It's a mark of being less reputable and less useful. If you're looking for typos, errors, try the links. If they're broken or missing, that is not a well-maintained site. And if the site's not maintained well, why would you want to use its information? If there's no author listed, if there's no clear organization, you can't figure out anything about that organization, or nobody is signing that source, again, why would you use something that someone's not going to put their name on? And again, recent site updates, making sure that those are relevant. The other thing you're going to want to look out for is incomplete sources. A lot of students look at Google Books, but Google Books are not complete books. They will pull out a page or two of the book and block you from seeing the rest. So you really need to make sure that you're looking at complete sources, not parts of books, and not abstracts. You'll find sometimes a source which is it's like a citation for an article, but all you get is the abstract. That's a really good candidate for plugging the name of that article into our library databases to see if you can get the whole article. So when we think about research, you really want to think about the rhetorical situation of the research essay. Academic audiences, like the professors who are grading your papers, value library sources. So whenever you're pulling an internet source into your research essay and into your essays for this class or for other classes, you want to think about whether that source is going to meet your audience's standards. Free sources are often substandard. Like, there's really no such thing as a free lunch. Professional writers, editors, proofreaders, publishers, fact checkers, those people need to get paid. And so the best resources that are written by professionals are often behind a paywall. You might be able to get 3 or 4 New York Times or Washington Post articles, but eventually it will block you, whereas those articles are available through our library databases. And remember, more authority from the source means more authority for you as the writer. If you are citing substandard sources that don't seem authoritative, you're not developing your authority in your own argument. So that's a brief overview of internet resources. There are some really good reasons to use them for your research process and sometimes even in your writing, but you want to be aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you can use them effectively.